What's happening? Benton here. Beloit, Wisconsin, rolling out of the truck stop. I would say headed to the yard, but apparently there's no yard with this company. So I think I'm headed to their office. And I'm assuming that someone in maintenance or equipment is going to then come pick up the rig. So I guess I will be moving out of the tractor to some extent today. It's always fun. Now, do we risk getting trapped over here by somebody trying to park? This is a very tight truck stop. I paid $20 for the paid ahead of time for the parking, mainly so that I did not have to deal with trying to park. I don't know if you guys can see how tight this is over here, but there were actually spaces here when I arrived. I sat on the street for about 15 minutes waiting to enter the truck stop while several trucks parked. How is everybody? Or is there anybody? So I've been watching a lot of these videos of these men and women who fall for these romance scams. The more I think about this stuff, I don't think these boomers should really even be allowed on the internet. That's the conclusion I've come to, is for their own protection. No boomers, other than the ones we know here in the so-called truth community. I guess there should be a distinguishment made, right? So how do we make that determination? See, now I can't ban all of the boomers, because then some of my audience goes away. Some of our audience goes away. So certainly can't ban Music Holds a Secret from the internet. I bet he's never sent a stranger money over the internet. Just imagine sending money to someone over the internet. You know that, I mean, what? In fact, my dad got mad at me one time because he was, I don't remember exactly what he was talking about, but he was talking about Facebook and these people contacting him, which is fine, I guess, except he failed to realize that these were, like, yeah, those are fake profiles. Like, and I guess his thing was that they're people, and I'm like, yeah, but they're not the people they claim to be. And he actually got mad at me, for pointing all this out. Thankfully, he would never, ever, ever send anybody money. In fact, it would be very unusual for him to send money to someone that he did know, and damn sure 0% chance of him sending money to someone that he did not know. Y'all have any catfishing stories or romance scams? Enter the studio here so I can highlight some comments. Now, I guess they're saying Ted killed himself, the Unabomber. Y'all know anything about that? No details. Last I heard, no details. And then I caught a few minutes of Chalk Body Outline from last night, or rather, Get Chalked Up. And they seemed to be, they were talking about the all this alien stuff, which I haven't been following any of these alien news stories. But he played some audio. I guess Drew played some audio. I guess it's from a local newscast wherever this particular event supposedly happened. And just listening to the voices of the people calling, I guess it was calls to 911, just sounds like any, your typical run-of-the-mill meth head, spun out on drugs. So I'm listening to what these people are reporting to the police, and these claims of they like this is 100% not human or whatever. But yeah, I'm sure many people have lost their minds on after abusing methamphetamine for a long period of time and have made similar claims. Certainly, this is nothing new. So why is this being taken seriously? What's up, Rob? Good to see you. Oh, Rob got catfish. Good Lord. Well, when I say catfish, I don't mean like you were meeting a lady. Well, okay, let me back up. Yeah, I guess that can happen with just wanting to date somebody. Um, so yeah, I think that's a little more understandable. Where somebody misrepresents themselves at the level of their physical attractiveness. So I should be more specific. I'm really talking more about these romance scams. I guess they're calling it catfishing because that's some of these channels have catfish in their name. I don't know. I'm out of touch. I haven't kept up with some of these things myself. But I met a lady online in the '90s and went and visited her in Texas, and that worked out all right. But I remember I haven't met that many ladies online, and I met this one particular lady, and I think this ties in with the romance scams, the people that fall for these romance scams and them being in a false reality. And, we talk about that a person is able to create their own reality for themselves and then inhabit it. I could just tell based on the picture this girl sent me, because you couldn't see anything below her chin. And her face looked okay, and her face didn't look obese. But eventually I just straight out asked her, because at the time, I think I weighed like 170, 75 pounds. I wouldn't have wanted to date a woman who weighed more than me. And I finally just said, do you weigh less than or more than 175 pounds? And then she got all mad and started describing these various, she had apparently had all these health issues, more or less. I guess she was like $1.25, or I'm sorry, 2 bills, deuce and a quarter. Yeah, there we go. So I was like, thanks, but no thanks. Yeah, as far as sending people money, that's never going to happen. It's my money, and I want it now. Speaking of snow, it was like 30 degrees. I was up in the northern part of Wisconsin. It was like got down to like 30 degrees when I was on my way to the delivery yesterday. I guess is that normal? Maybe that's normal for this time of year. Man, what are these guys doing up in front of me? Forced me to break the law and jump in the hammer lane. I slept in way longer than normal. I woke up at 3:30. That's for me. That's about as long as I'm able to sleep in. But we will be dealing with some Chicago area traffic. Getting close. I think we're somewhere near Rockford, Illinois, which is they got a little bit of traffic, decent amount of road construction. There's our no trucks left lane sign. We hate our first ticket to be on stream. That'd be no good. I've already been inspected on stream, I think twice, actually. At least twice. Yeah, it's if I ever get the chance to do some streams from my computer, I'd like to play some of these videos and break down some of these, the psychology of, like I said, it's not just ladies, it's also men that fall for this. However, I find the ladies' stories to be a little more interesting, personally. And the lack of accountability and personal responsibility I find shocking. And then a lot of them like to say, well, this could happen to anybody. It's like, no, it could not. There's a lot of people that would never, ever, ever, ever fall for this. And then, so this one channel I've been watching, I forget the name of it, but, you know, they show all the logical proof to these ladies. And the ladies still, in most cases, continue to communicate with these scammers. And usually, while I think a lot of the ladies do stop sending money, some of them still send money a few more times. You know, even after, so, and which I think is an excellent reminder to the so-called truth community that, you know, true information no longer matters, and just going out and just straight up telling people facts about the realm is really neither here nor there. They feel however they feel about it, and that's just, you know, whatever false reality. And that's also why I say waking up is not a thing. And furthermore, I'm realizing, and we can call them NPCs, or, you know, there can be many terms, but, you know, increasingly I'm realizing that a large portion of the populace, really the reality does not make sense to them anyway. Meaning that it's not like they've grown up in a you know, a socialization process and in a culture that makes sense to that they've never validated with their own logic that yes, this makes sense. They've just gone along with whatever they've been presented. So of course, when a scammer gets them into a certain emotional state, of course they just go along with whatever logic or whatever, you know, premises are, you know, presented. Because, you know, we seem to have this belief that, well, yeah, of course our daily lives are logical and make sense. I'm like, the more I'll examine it, I'm like, not really. Really not. No, now there is a certain logic and a certain coherence, you know, narratively. And then I'm also detecting when a lot of the ladies are recounting, you know, the ways in which the scammers are claiming to be in dire straits and need money. It's always like these third world type of narratives of like trying to travel from one country to another country and not having the correct papers, and now a fine has to be paid, or the person's trapped in this foreign land. And it's like, you know, as an American, you know, even if I had some sort of emotional regard for a stranger over the internet, I think in my mind I would be like, yeah, but I'm not from fucking some third world country. I'm from America. Like, we don't really deal with this here. So like, isn't that kind of your problem? You know, I don't live in this reality. That's like a almost like an old world type of mentality. Like, pay the toll to the troll so that you can pass the bridge from one, you know, magical kingdom into the next. Like, it just sounds very far-fetched to me. You know, maybe that's why some of these ladies fall for it. I don't know. What do y'all think? I guess I got both my mics on. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I've probably been feeding back. Well, and here's where being an asshole comes in. I don't even consider the other person's feelings. You can call me, you know, you can have, what the fuck was that? You can have whatever opinion about that you want, but if, you know, if my answer is no, my answer is no, and I don't give a flying fuck what anybody else feels about me saying no. So that's their problem. And I think I've more or less always been that way. And I even don't like it if I'm in some sort of situation where maybe it's in a store or, in some sort of entanglement where, the other person has to tell me no, but I can tell they're sort of letting me down gently and trying to manage my emotions. I hate that. Shit, just tell me what it is and I'll deal with it. Like, let's just get out with it. What is all this? Which I realize is because most people do sort of need to be let down gently in that way. But yeah. Well, and I do remember when I first started work at Outback Steakhouse, I worked there for like 3 years, and this one girl, I guess she'd been there since the beginning, and maybe she used to be attractive, but I wasn't attracted to her. But and this was kind of the height of Benton, like weightlifting and all into his appearance. Whatever that version Tommy says of being, when Tommy was talking about being all roided out, which I was never on roids, but I was definitely into my appearance. And I remember talking to this chick who I guess she thought she was a big deal, and I was new, so sort of, initially I guess that's sort of a difference in status, but not for me. And I remember she kept hinting around about moving or whatever, and then I'm so dense, and I finally just realized, oh, she thinks I'm going to volunteer to come help her move. I finally just was like, I'm not going to help you move. Like, just looked at her like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, I just met you. Why would I come help you move? Like what? Doesn't even make sense. And we all know moving sucks. Why would I, and also when I move, I'm not trying to involve other people in that. That shit sucks, man. But yeah, people asking for stuff. Hilarious. And I don't mind giving to some homeless people here and there, but I generally, if somebody comes up and asks me, I usually don't give them anything, typically. Those are bullshit stories 100% of the time. Whatever, somebody comes up asking for money. Well, unless it's just the way the rare times I had to ask would just be like, hey, could you help me out with a few dollars? Just hey, it is what it is, right? But man, especially these boomers, god dang, I feel sorry for Music Holds a Secret having to be associated with these people because he's nothing like them. And Gary Baxter, same thing, I mean, what a fucking mess. Well, and then me, it's funny, to change the subject a little bit. With me being sort of a self-starter and self-motivated, and I push myself a lot, and my job is not an 8 to 5 job, so I'm already I feel like I'm behind schedule since I woke up late. All of this, late by my late by my standards. It's actually early by other people's standards. But then, the GPS says I'm going to get to the office at 7:12. And then I understand the psychology of these people that work 7 to 4 or 8 to 5. They may get to work at 7, but it's like an hour to an hour and a half of just bullshitting and doing almost nothing. It's sort of coming out of their stupor, to even start becoming productive. So realistically, I have plenty of time, to accomplish whatever I need to accomplish when I get there. I noticed that Z started going live like an hour early. Z might be live. I'm not sure. I do notice my southern drawl seems to be increasing. Does anybody notice that? I feel like I'm really having to concentrate and move my facial muscles much more than normal to make the right noises so that I may be clearly understood. Well, and by the way, yeah, what's up? There's plenty of people in that generation who would never, ever, under any circumstances, fall for these. So really, I guess I'm painting with a broad brush. I shouldn't really just say that about boomers. I will say this about boomers. Almost all of them, whatever they see online, they believe it. As far as visuals, they believe whatever they see, they believe it. You can tell them, like my dad, I can tell him until I'm blue in the face that, hey man, a lot of these videos this is not real. These are not real images. He just doesn't believe. He just, on some level, if he sees it, he believes it. Period. End of story. So I think that's why he got mad at me about trying to say that these are fake accounts, contacting you on Facebook. And I think his interpretation was I'm saying they're not real people. It's like, no, they're real people. They're not the pictures you're being sent are not the people you're talking to. One across the board. Anybody that just randomly is contacting you on Facebook, that they are not the person in the pictures 100% of the time. There's nobody out there just trying to meet people by sending out Facebook friends requests. And I know how people's minds work, and they'll say that they know somebody that does just that. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm playing the odds. But yeah, man, I wish I had known about these videos earlier. This shit and some of it is just hilarious. Like they'll show these pictures that these scammers send, and it's just so laughable that anybody could think this was real. Some of these photoshops. And it's not stupidity, although some of the people are very, very dumb. It's not stupidity, it's delusion and living in a false reality and wanting and actually having a desire. The man or the woman, they have a desire for love, right? And whatever that is, romantic love. And then so much so that, one of the ladies, like, she was enamored because the first thing the guy said to her was literally, hey. Like that's some kind of way to so it shows that it really had nothing to do with who was approaching her and how she was being approached. It was that she believed it was like an attractive person, a professional, whatever this profile is. And then at that point, if she believes it's really that person really can't do any wrong. But then there's plenty of just random bozos in all of these ladies' local towns. See, there's all these random bozos that would probably like to date someone their own age. But these women and men, by the way, so the men who get catfished, the men who get scammed, they are all, it's always some woman, the pictures of some woman who's way too young and way too attractive for him, right? Always. And I don't think there's anything wrong with meeting people online. And in fact, my dad met his new lady. He met her online. But guess what? She's his age, and like he could get a woman his own age who's attractive in real life. So for me, it was like, yeah, if I was going to meet women online, I think I would stick to women that I could realistically go out and meet in real life, because I've always been able to meet women in the course of my daily life. And I understand society's changed to where, more and more people are meeting online. Yeah, I realize that. I would still prefer to do it in person, but, if I was so inclined, which clearly I'm not. Yeah, shout out to Cool Moms. What's up? And then, gift cards. It's like, oh, I need to pay this $10,000 fee, but I don't. Oh, so they accept Amazon gift cards? I mean, this is what? This is confusing. I never knew you could just. So why do I even have like a prepaid debit card? Can I just get my paycheck on Amazon gift cards? Go around town spending Amazon gift cards? Like, why do we even have a banking system? What is this? The people are not processing data, clearly. What's up, Capricorny? Good to see you. There you go. Yeah. Indeed, sir. Indeed. Oh, he's been pretty good in the rain, I have to say. And the ice and snow, but the key there is go slow as fuck and leave plenty of space. If you ever see these big pileups on the ice and snow, like on the interstate, that could never happen to me because I'd be going so freaking slow and leaving such a following distance. Well, and then of course, if I can't see where I'm going, I won't be driving at all. Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I can definitely focus and go full radio voice or whatever. I have noticed when I'm not in the South, my accent seems to get worse for whatever reason. Not sure why that is. Yeah, what's y'all know anything about these aliens? I guess that's the new hotness, right? The aliens. I just can't get into it. That Chinese balloon story, I tapped out there. I'm done. I'm pretty much done. I do pay attention to politics a little bit. Yeah, we're gonna hit traffic. Yeah, Anunnaki GMO Folgers. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was the one Drew played on Get Chalked Up, and just me listening to it. A lot of times I'm not looking at the phone because I'm doing other stuff, but just listening to that, it just sounds like you're just run of the mill meth head type of calling the police because they're so out of their fucking mind on drugs. That happens all the time. So it would be a simple matter, if this is some form of a psyop or a manufactured story, which I'm sure it is on some level. It'd be very easy to already have audio, that could be used for that. That would be a simple matter, as all those calls are recorded. But good to see you, my couch. I never know if that's just some random person I happen to show up in their feed, or if that's a name that's been here before, and my memory escapes me possibly. And Illumitami and Paul Enslaved seem to be working together. I do enjoy that combination when they're not yelling at each other. Uh, and this is where I will. Wow, man. My dad is a stutterer, and I stutter on occasion. When it happens to me, I just stop talking for a minute and sort of regroup and just be like, I just think, well, that was strange. Why was I unable to speak there momentarily? What's up, Big Drink T? Good to see you. Big Drink T living his best life out there. if I had some money, I would send a camera crew out there to just follow Big Drink T through his daily life. I bet that would make for an interesting documentary based on what I've seen. What was I even talking about? Oh, Tommy. Because if folks are aware, there's been several famous battles between Tommy and Paul that have occurred right here on this broadcast. And I would be as neutral as possible, as I felt I was able to be, and just let them hash it out. And I never really enjoyed those arguments, me personally. I found them very draining, actually. But I would like to take some credit for maybe that helped them get to whatever place they are now. Although I'm assuming it won't last. I mean, I'm assuming they will fall out yet again, right? But yeah, shout out to Tommy. But I've caught them on live streams together recently, Paul and Tommy, and it's been quite enjoyable, I must say. Indeed, Snafu, the optics are high. I wonder, Snafu, have you ever sent money to a stranger over the internet? You ever been romance scammed? Yeah, Wizard versus Jack. Yeah. Well, one time it was Tommy and Paul, or Tommy versus Wizard and Paul. And Tommy was getting the best of them, and then they tried to wait him out. And that was one of the few times I interjected because I said, Tommy, they're trying to wait you out, and then they're going to come back and beat you. They're going to wait till his energy falls too low. And then he seemed to get it together. Yeah. Yeah, Talcott. I'm pretty much out of the loop on Talcott. I'm out of the Talcott loop. But he does seem to be an endless source of content, from what I can tell. I don't know, is the Anton crossover, is that over with? The Anton Daniels? I guess I need to unsubscribe. For a while there were some actual Paul related content showing up in my feed through Anton, but now it seems to not be related to any of that. Yeah, Wizard. Well, and then Paul calling out Wizard a little bit recently, which I think is probably good. My opinion was, in my time of watching Paul's panels, I always felt like Wizard got a little bit more deference. Of course, I don't know the backstory and the history, but I know what's been mentioned of it. I was not there to observe it, I should say, but felt like maybe there was a little too much deference shown to Wizard at times. That was, my opinion anyway. Yep, got to have the coffee. Long term, I'm planning to get off of coffee, but my mood is better when I'm not drinking caffeine on the daily. One thing too is if a person goes several months without caffeine, that first cup of coffee, man, woo, with no tolerance or dependence, just like this, a tall, which is a small, Starbucks black coffee, man, that'll hit you. It's good stuff. or any black coffee. Starbucks tastes like shit, but they've got the caffeine dialed in, I must say. Mr. Me in the house. Good to see you, bro. Out there in Tennessee. And now that I'm back to work, man, I don't have the energy for the panels anymore. As far as me hosting panels, I just really don't. Thanks, Austin Murphy. Yeah, I'm unintentionally funny, that's for sure. Unintentionally funny. I do feel like the channel, like I sort of missed an opportunity with Tommy, because I was on the verge of giving him the keys back in the day and the recent past, and trying to have him host his own show here. It'd be pretty good for the channel if Tommy was able to host panels on here without me being involved. Just like I say, it's too draining. I guess I could always just post the link and bring people up and then backstage myself, right? Yeah, I haven't had too much to talk about lately. I guess that seems unusual. I look back at 6 weeks in the motel doing streams every day, and then I look back on my last truck driving job where I was, sometimes it was like 7.5 hours of panels, and I was, more or less my whole driving shift was panels. And man, how did I even have the energy for that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting better at resting. We'll see how this works out at the company. I may just tell them, hey, because they don't really seem to have me on any sort of schedule as far as with a lot of these drivers, get a lot of these drivers end up pulling so much dedicated freight that, they really have to schedule their time off. The company does. So I'm not scheduled for any time off, but they seem to just be, my scheduling seems to just be very fly by the seat of our pants, which it doesn't bother me really. So maybe I'll just say, hey, I'll take, clean the truck out for the most part. Although the company, they don't always like that because then they think you might quit. But I wouldn't mind going and playing poker for a couple of nights. Although that will screw up my sleep schedule. I get paid on Friday and I got money right now. So we'll see. If I keep working the pace I'm working now, my goal was to save up 20 grand for a poker bankroll. The problem for me is if the company pushes me to run a lot of miles, I'll end up running a lot of miles. But if they let me not run a lot of miles, I would rather run less miles, me personally, just work every day. So I think I've averaged like, I don't think I'm at like probably 380 miles a day, which is nothing. But the company doesn't seem to mind. So I don't know. This is an old truck. Maybe they figure it's just old equipment. This guy seems responsible. He's got a clean record. I think they got the word from my last company that I'm a little rough on the dispatchers at times. But just give him enough time and let him do his thing. I don't think it'll ever end. No. What's up's asking the Talcott nonsense. Well, and the thing to realize about Talcott is he cannot change. It's not possible for him to change. Now and I've noticed this because of my father and Jack have similar psychology with this. What probably is a true classical narcissism, which is rare, by the way, although it is becoming more common. And I've done some breakdowns, and part of this is my fault. If I had realized that I guess I underestimated Talcott's staying power. So I dropped the ball by not keeping up with my own commentary on Jack over time, because I believe I've had the most astute breakdowns of Jack's psychology, and it's all on this channel somewhere. But there's so much material at this point, it would be damn near impossible for me to go back and find that. And I know I played just the video of me, going in on Talcott, on the original In a Yurt with Books channel. I played that now classic footage and reacted to my own footage like 3 or 4 different times. And at least a couple of those reactions were pretty damn good. And I think I even did a reaction to the reaction at a certain point. Unfortunately, all of that material is lost to time, even though it's still on the channel. Uh-oh. Where are we going? 88 East? Okay. It's not this exit. Yep. No, I don't think that will ever. Here's why that the channels won't stop. They won't stop promoting him. Is people do need content, especially somebody like, yeah, could Paul do what I'm doing? Well, let's not even say that. Leave me out of it. Paul absolutely could do a couple of hours. I think Paul could do 2 to 5 hours a day solo, no problem. But if he's going to, I don't know that I can't speak for Paul. I'm saying Paul doesn't need other people to do a broadcast. However, he obviously has his own reasons for doing that, and so do other people. OTW News, although I don't think Talcott comes on his panel much, but there's so I would say this: as long as panels are a thing, Talcott will be a thing. And I've noticed this in my father, and I've noticed this in Talcott. Can't change emotionally, can't change in very specific ways as far as needing this so-called narcissistic supply. And I've talked about the existential crisis where emotionally at a very infantile level that he truly believes, Talcott truly believes, if people stop interfacing with his psyche, with what he believes to be himself, as long as people are willing to interface with that, then he can feel okay on some level. It's a sense of comfort and a security blanket because, yes, in fact, he does exist. So he has to have, and even he himself is sad about panels. He says that he has to be there because he's burned out everybody in his daily life so much. He's burned all those bridges, and so much so that his last resort before panels seemed to be inviting these Spokane meth heads into his house, and I guess he learned his lesson. And then he was trying to do his own streams, like a monologue style, but that's not going to function as narcissistic supply. So when he found the panels, he's never going anywhere. And then the panels are happy to use him, in that way. And he is affable and charming on some level. And I would say he has a good personality based on, being able to talk to him and, at a surface level. He's pleasant. My father also very charming, pleasant. Yeah, I bet it does, Jimbo, out there in England. I'm sure it does. Yep. I like the rain, personally. Although I no longer have a rain suit. I used to have a full rain suit. And I'm not sure what happened to it. I guess I'll buy another one at some point. Yeah, we're talking about Talcott. So the thing about people like Talcott and my father is they're very sophisticated in being able to. So like with Jack, when he makes a misstep, and what I mean by a misstep is when his behavior causes these very strong negative reactions on the part of these people that he's trying to have these interactions with over a long period of time, what happens is that, well, he doesn't take any accountability of that. However, he has these psychological mechanisms that are able to take in that information to realize through pattern recognition, okay, the other person reacted very strongly based on these circumstances and this pattern, and they're very sophisticated in almost real time at changing their approach. So it's easy for the people who interact with Jack to mistake that for progress. And I've heard people say, well, Talcott seems to be making progress. Well, no, he's not, because he can't. Same with my dad. He can't make progress. Now, what Talcott can do, and what I've seen my father do, is they can sort of rein in their own toxicity. Like my father's been able to do that to some extent, to where, in spite of himself, because I'm a very direct, I will communicate very directly and strongly, right? And I will strongly set boundaries. Well, these people like Talcott and my father, they hate boundaries, right? But, if my father or Talcott, if they feel like they're getting something out of it, so to my father, it's in his best interest to have a relationship with me, based on how other people view him, right? And he probably does. We do get along. We do have some similar interests, right? But I'm not going to have his toxicity in my life. And since I'm so good with pattern recognition, I detected all of these patterns in my father where he's using me for narcissistic supply. I just won't engage with him on those levels, right? I just refuse to. I won't have anything to do with those patterns. So that's probably why I don't have anything to do with Talcott, because there's no meat on the bone to come on Benton's panel, because Benton is never, I'm never going to give him what he's looking for, ever. And then, I went through my phase of believing, okay, now I have an intellectual understanding of exactly what's wrong with my father. So I too went through this version of, oh, well, now I can explain it to him. He just ends up using that for narcissistic supply, that I'm going to, and I do have, as a lay expert in human psychology, I'm not qualified to be a therapist, but, I probably could, I'm probably high level enough to actually be a therapist. However, even if I had credentials as a therapist, well, nobody's a therapist for their own father. So, and I've even told my dad at a certain point, I said, man, you're trying to talk to me like I'm a therapist. Meanwhile, you won't go to therapy, meaning my father. I said, hey, man, I can be your therapist, except I charge $100 an hour. And even as a therapist, that's an inappropriate, I can't be the therapist to my father, even if I had the credentials. So, like, what are we even talking about? And I know I've sort of gone off into left field here, but I'll try to get back on the road here. That's irony. Let me see if I can get us out of the muck we seem to be mired in. So I believe people get fooled by that sophisticated adaptation to the other person. And if you look at manipulators and people who are, and my father is very good at manipulation. It more or less comes naturally to me. I'm sure Talcott has a long history of manipulation. He seems to have that personality type. And by the way, what is all this, live without fear, all this, ascend, vibing high, all these new agey ideas? Well, what better cover for this horrible life of abuse and crossing in this, habitual line stepping that that I did to some extent when I was a bad person, that Talcott is certainly engaged in. What better cover for that than to dress it up with all this, hey man, let's love everybody. You know, I have, trying to sell this bill of goods that he has love in his heart, which I don't accept that out of anybody really. Um, until I feel the love, you know, until I feel the love, I just assume it's not present. And in our society today, I would say there's a great lack of love. Love meaning treating other people, with regard and patience and kindness, and, without expecting anything in return. It's not really a thing. Yeah, there you go. The rapist. I'll take the rapist for 200, Alex. So many people are fooled by these sophisticated adaptations. And see, here's how I know. So, and I've talked about this before, that when I make these assertions about narcissism or my dad or being an expert in psychology, people use a lot of people use an incorrect strategy where they try to debunk what I'm saying. Instead, what they should be trying to do is affirm what I'm saying, and then if what I'm saying cannot be affirmed, then it stands and is true. So when my father, so I had, I've had a relationship with my father over time, but part of that was I didn't communicate with him at all for about 5 years. So then, right about the time we were reconnecting was when I almost died, and in fact believed that I only had a few years to live, which may still be the case. I really don't know. I'm still sick on a daily basis, like I talk about, but my energy levels have come back. I feel okay most of the time, but I'm still, you know, I feel pretty fucking shitty at some point every day. But so it's like it's a mixed bag, right? And I don't want to go off into a health thing anyway right now, but I don't know. I could live another 10 years, I would say. Of course, that's all. Again, I was 126 pounds recently, and I'm thinking, man, if I keep losing weight, if I get down to 110 pounds at that point, it's like, good Lord, how long can I live? So yeah, as long as I can stay around 140 pounds, which is probably about what I weigh now, which is technically, believe it or not, that's a normal body. It's close to underweight, but it's actually not even underweight for my size. So medium frame, 5'10". So if I can stay around this weight, I could live another 10 years probably. But I'm always on the verge of something happening with my digestion where, now, my issues have cropped up, and if I drop 15 pounds in a month, which I've done, which could easily happen again. Now I'm back to 125, and it's like, okay, if I lose, 10% of that, is what? That's 12 pounds. If I lose 10% of that body weight, now we're on the verge of what if I get down to 100 pounds and can't gain weight? How long can I live? So it's still fraught with peril, certainly, to be sure. And I can only live this way. The fact that my health has recovered to the extent it has over the last year, that's almost solely based on my mentality with respect to these issues. Just facing it head on and worst case scenarioing it across the board. I'm going to continue to do that. Anyway, I digress. So I felt like, and Norm Macdonald had passed, and all of these people that thought they were close to Norm were just shocked because, wow, we had no idea that he was seriously ill for the last 10 years, right? And Norm, by the way, probably had something similar to what I have, although he went through the medical system, so he was bloated and overweight instead of being scrawny and underweight. He was on all kind of meds, I'm sure. that destroyed his quality of life, certainly. So, so I'm looking at my situation like, okay, do I Norm Macdonald it and just not tell anybody, or do I contact my loved ones and say, hey, it looks like I'm probably not long for this world, as uncomfortable and as painful as those conversations are, which is what I did. So I met up with my father in person. Well, it just so happened that his relationship with his third wife, not my mom, a lady I never met, had become very abusive, and she had preyed on his psychology, and it separated him from all of his people and got him off by himself, and was really very psychologically manipulative and abusive, and he just had very little resistance, unfortunately. And still had the Jehovah's Witness cult programming, right? So Musical is a Secret may be able to tell you it's easy for somebody like that to be preyed upon yet again. And I can see that in some of the conversations I've had with Musical, and I guess I really shouldn't put him on Front Street. My apologies, MHTS. I apologize. Let's leave him out of it. And I must say, I'm no longer holding his interest. It's funny, people I used to really hold their interest. I am a bit of a one-track pony, I guess, in that regard. He's probably heard most of my stories by now, or maybe he's out there living life. He is on Eastern time. Might be mowing his yard. Well, but my natural body weight, I graduated high school at an athletic 135 pounds, like with a pretty solid lower body, if that gives you any idea of how scrawny my upper body always has been. And even when I was 195 pounds, cock diesel with a lot of muscle, my neck was wider than my ears, I still had scrawny shoulders and a scrawny upper chest. So I've always had a scrawny upper body, even when I had and tiny wrists. Like at 195 pounds, I still had like these tiny little wrists. So it is what it is. But I got big hips and big ankles. I've always had a solid lower body, even when I was 135 pounds. Yeah, but 6 foot 165, that is a healthy body. If you go by the BMI chart, that's normal. See, you say it's too thin. No, it's not. We have such a skewed idea of what's healthy body weight. Again, go back to what Adam Carolla talks about in Gilligan's Island. The skipper was considered a big fat guy, and if you go back and look at the skipper from Gilligan's Island, nowadays that would not be considered fat. That would just be a normal sized man with a gut. But he was made fun of for being a fat guy on that show. Like, people are just, we're just fucking obese, man. The average person is overweight, and a huge portion of people are literally obese. That's just what it is. What it is. But yeah, 126 is certainly too light. Absolutely. But yeah, me weighing 5 more pounds than I weighed when I was 18. Although I probably did, when I graduated high school, I was probably closer to 5'8" than I was 5'10". I'm sure I grew a couple of inches, but either way, yeah. Yeah, see, 6'2", 155, especially if you're broad-shouldered, because if you look at a chart, a height and weight chart, they have small frame, medium frame, and large frame. See, you might have a large frame. You probably do if you have broad shoulders, Rob. See, I say I'm medium frame because I have my lower body is more of a big frame and my upper body is a small frame. So I would say that averages out to medium. Like when I lifted weights and got real big, like my lower body more or less looked like an NFL running back, like for real, like just all ass and thighs. And then uh, my upper body did not look like that at all. It's like, so it's like, yeah, I'm the same height. I was the same height and weight as Marshall Falk, and my lower body might have been similar, but the upper body was not anywhere near that. You know, it's funny how that works, right? It's funny how you can have the same height and weight as somebody and like not look the same at all. So there is a lot of differences in our bodies. Well, and we know, by the way, What's Up said he's 6 foot and never weighed over 170. The people who live the longest eat way less calories on a daily basis than the rest of the population. And I can see my dad, who's just naturally had a lot of muscle mass, just a big dude without really ever having to work out or lift weights. Just a big motherfucker, like literally built like the Thing from Fantastic Four. Uh, you know, he's slimming up for the stretch run now that he's damn near 70. But I never made my point on Talcott. Let me see if I can get back to that. Never fully made that point. Well, we might get lucky and not hit too much traffic at the risk of jinxing myself. And I will say this about being 135 pounds when I graduated high school. I was not a badass in any way, but nobody my size ever gave me any sort of a challenge ever physically, whether it was sports or wrestling or, you know, which I did not do as a sport, but I could just fucking ragdoll somebody my own size, like without even trying. I was always going up against people much bigger than me and could hold my own, right? But somebody who was actually weighed the same as me, dude, I could just almost just like throw them around like nothing. I've always been that way. Like you know, like probably could have body slammed a 135 pounder when I was 18. You know, just put my hands on somebody, right? It just came natural. That's why I think if I had come along a little later, I would have liked to do something like MMA for a sport. But I don't have any fighting skills. But I think it would have been fun, you know, as a sport. I would have had certainly would have been. I'm bigger than all the guys, you know, most of the guys who weigh what I weigh, as far as height and weight, or height rather, and reach. Anyway, I've told that story before. Things Benton can do, right? Hashtag things Benton can do. So yeah, I don't think anybody with the Talcott stuff. There's he does provide so much content, and there's something to somebody who, you know, at his core level being, he will never change because he can't change, and I think just that's very appealing, and those levels of delusion that he's able to access, you know, I think it's endlessly fascinating for the observer, and to be able to interact with that in real time, and then so much of his sophisticated ways of adapting to the other person, so much of that can get mistaken for, well, he's really trying, you know. Oh, I was trying to talk about my dad. Yeah. Well, so when I first reconnected with him, he was in this abusive relationship. So he was using me to tell his abusive wife, "Hey, I gotta leave because I gotta go help my son who's seriously ill." Right? Which, realistically, number one, I didn't need his help. Number two, he wasn't capable of helping me. But we were able to work together in some way. Like, I helped him as much as he helped me, because I helped him, like, you know, get out of his living situation. Then we stayed in a motel. You know, we worked together. Then, you know, he eventually got moved into his own apartment. Like, I helped facilitate all of that, you know, in certain ways. and just being able to even deal with him because he was like just like a lost little child in a lot of ways because that woman had done such a number on his psychology, man. She had really beaten him down. Just his 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 cognitive function was very much impaired. His decision making was not good, man. What's up, Woody? Yeah, we didn't have wrestling in the South, so yeah. If we had people that wrestled for a sport, I'm sure they would have kicked my ass. I don't have any doubt of that. Just if I ever, we just wrestled for fun as boys, and it was usually since I was one of the smallest kids, I was almost always wrestling somebody bigger than me. So the times, I guess, just all that practice against bigger guys. When I did the few times I encountered somebody my own size, it was just easy to just I could just dominate them very easily. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Rob. That's awesome. Yeah, wrestling's a big deal, man. I wish I would have enjoyed it. I'm sure. Just there's no real wrestling in the deep south. Maybe there is now, but when I was a kid, it just wasn't a thing. It was all football. Football was king of everything. Yeah. You talking to Rob? Rob and Z? So I got no beef with Z, me personally, other than being in the same time slot to some extent. Yeah, Rob says that's cap. Oh, at Piano Man. Yeah, I guess I could read the comments. It might make a little more sense if I actually read the comments. Yeah, maybe I'll take a few days off. I don't know. We'll see what the company wants to do. Because I'm making about the same amount that I made before. I'm making actually a little bit more on average, but I'm working less. But part of that is I'm going to have a tax burden to take care of it. So really, I'm not making more, but I have access to just as much money in the short term, I should say. The thing about poker is I could play poker for a few, for like 3 or 4 nights, and I could win enough to put a dent in this money I'm trying to save, or I could lose, which really wouldn't affect anything other than I would just have to work a little longer to make some money. So I don't know, maybe I will because I would prefer to just clean the truck, take most of my things out of the truck, let them have it, and then come back in a few days. That's what I would rather do, honestly. What is today? Tuesday? Yeah, I could do that. And apparently there's a pretty good poker room in Chicago that has a lot of poker games going. Elgin, Illinois, I guess, somewhere near Chicago. I like Chicago, by the way. I always have. Although I've spent limited time in Chicago. Now we get into my health issues, though. I might have to have a Chicago dog. That might be worth just trying to see how sick I'll get if I just go eat a fucking hot dog. Maybe I'm not as sick as I thought I was. But I got to say, in the long term, I like what Yurt's doing. I can see he's really finding his way. I can see what he's doing. Uh, I think with Yurt, it's going to come down to what it comes down to with a lot of folks is just, will he grind it out? I think I've proven that I'm a motherfucking grinder, and I do take some amount of pride in being a grinder. You know, And you know, I do take some days off here and there. I might have been off. I don't even remember if I streamed yesterday, although I probably did. I can't even remember. But yeah, good old Sack. Shout out to Sack, by the way. Hmm. And Sack's got a lot of potential, man. I think Sack could be a pretty cool city, man. I don't know what to think. I like Davis though. I like kind of small college towns. Davis is an interesting place. I spent like a week in Davis one time. Uh, it's hilarious, dude. Camped out in a bush, like along a chain link fence on the campus, like out in some field, dude. It was hilarious. Dude, some of the I wish I had taken better pictures of some of these pictures and video, man. If I could like live that life now of what I lived in the past, dude, I think I could have a pretty decent channel. You know, and the world has changed really. It's not even really feasible to try to live that way anymore, I don't think. But man, if I had videotaped, you know, if I even just had recorded a lot of what I used to do, dude, it's just crazy. The way I used to live, man, hilarious. Oh yeah, Winters. I've seen the sign for Winters a lot. I don't think I've actually been to Winters. Yeah, west of Davis. Yeah, Davis. For me, it was an interesting place. I liked the vibe. One of the rare places people would actually give me money here and there. I think somebody gave me like 20 bucks. It's pretty hard to get people to give one. It's hard to get cash out of it. Californians are so burned out. They've been panhandled so much. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Austin. I love California, man. I'll probably never go there again, but I do love it. Oh, Woody. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, and see, I myself am not. I'm not as skeptical as I probably should be or could be. But as an early adopter of the internet, I'm at least aware of images can be fake. So it's like I know my dad. It's like a cognitive dissonance because I know my father understands what Photoshop is. Like I think most of these boomers are aware of image editing. It's just I think their experience with media has been to just everything on the TV is 100% true, and then that gets kind of extrapolated out into social media and the internet in general, right? But you know, I am sort of gullible by nature, but then I'm use my critical thinking and my own analytical. So I sort of I'm gullible initially in a lot of ways, but then I continue to, if I'm not able to affirm, what I've initially accepted, then I do reject it. But yeah, these boomers, man, a lot of them just they're never going to figure it out. They're never going to really be able to accept it. That yeah, man, most of this bullshit's just completely fake. Well, I think the young folks, I don't think it's, and I agree with your point here, Woody. But what I observe about the young folks is because they've grown up interfacing with the technology, you know, they just inherently realize there's fake videos and fake images, and they can very astutely tell. So they don't even interface with the fake stuff for the most part, right? They're the ones who they're with it on those levels. I guess we're finally hitting the traffic 26 miles out. 45. Nobody's going 45. So yeah, the actual young people, anybody under 30, 20, 29 and below. That's the young folks. Yeah, if Yurt can grind it out and keep working on what he's doing, I think he's got probably the best chance of doing something. I mean, I enjoy what Z does, but he's probably I could be wrong, but he's probably just about peaked out with his where he's at with his talent and abilities. I don't think Yurt's even scratched the surface. I think he's got a lot of upside potential. Yeah. Well, so like for me and being 47, I've got since I've more or less been on the internet every day going back to 1994, I have a lot of, it's hard to fool me, although I'm not saying it's impossible to fool me, but it's hard to fool me just because I'm very familiar with the internet. So when you get these older folks who are very unsophisticated and aren't really familiar with the internet, that's a recipe for disaster in a lot of ways. Because I can remember being on the internet in the '90s, and if I met somebody online that claimed to be a female, well, that's a dude until proven otherwise. Especially because back then there were very few women on the internet. But then again, I met a lady in '94 or '95 and traveled to Texas and talked to her in real life. So like wasn't 100% fake. But until I talked to her on the phone and then met her in person, right? Until that happens, it's not real. Regardless of what I believe. I think a lot of these older folks, they put a lot of relevance on what they believe. So the fact that they believe and feel that things are a certain way, that's a mistake for them to then give that some sort of value. They're assigning value to the fact that they believe in it. And several of these women, when they're going through these catfish stories, they get to a point where when faced with the fact that they have been tricked and fooled and scammed, a lot of them relay it back to, well, they're the type of person who would never lie. And they're the type of person who is honest or whatever, which may be the case. However, that has nothing to do with other people. So just a fundamental misunderstanding of life itself, like the fact that they were socialized to be a nice person who's trusting and believes in certain things. Yeah, that's fine, but that doesn't ascribe those characteristics to other people. And then what if these people grew up in an environment where they were socialized in the olden days, to where whether the people in their local community behave that way or internalize those ideas, everybody was incentivized to at least pretend to have these values of integrity and honesty and being a nice, decent, wholesome person. And to then project that value system onto the internet, right? That's a grave fucking error. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And the fact that even after they realize they've been scammed, for them not to realize how big of an issue that is. They're never truly going to be able to learn from these experiences until they can realize that, wow, I was victimized in large part based on my own belief system. Again, my own good nature used against me and my own programming used against me. Well, that's too general of a. Unfortunately, that's too general of a. I'm really not good at answering generalized statements, unfortunately, or I'm not good at answering broad questions. So I don't know. It would be an interesting topic to explore, I would say. I sort of just stumble onto things, you know. I don't really when I'm rambling, you know. So I would say I'm a rambler, but I'm a high level rambler. I'm able to sort of keep a coherent narrative for the most part, but you know, I'm like king of the ramblers in some ways. But yeah, I'm good with specific questions, but not very good with general questions. So I don't really know, man. Well, I guess we're in the shit now. Looks like. Well, but I mean, and I don't disagree, Woody. It's just what does conservative mean though? What I mean, this in this context, what do we mean by conservative? See, I wouldn't even view that as conservative. I would view that as uh, less of the you know, third wave feminism, less of the, you know, LGBT stuff, less of, although that's not even true because there has been a certain embrace of that. So I don't even know what I mean. I guess I'll have to think about that before I can give an intelligent answer or an intelligent response. I would want to have a clear definition of conservative because as far as I'm concerned, that term has lost all meaning. Conservative means nothing. It's in the current context as far as I'm concerned. It's basically meaningless. Yeah. Well, there's not a single conservative in any level of government anywhere. Nowhere. Your local mayor's not a conservative. The people on your local city council are not conservatives, regardless of what they claim. Your local school board are not conservatives. There's not a single conservative anywhere at any level of government. Nowhere. It's not a thing. Based on the actions of the people. Because they can't behave as a conservative based on what we've been programmed to believe a conservative would be. They can't behave that way and occupy that position. It's no longer possible. And then, you know, if we just talk about Democrat and Republican, well, that literally flipped at a certain point. If you want to go to the free speech movement, that was the Berkeley hippies and the radicals, in, you know, the radical college students. The free speech movement, that was all Democrat lefty, and that's now free speech is now associated with Republicans and the right. So you know that shows you psyop upon psyop. You know, this is programming. You know, yeah, ban fascism. But I think the idea of conservatism and traditional family values as a way of life, I think that's a mistake in and of itself. To view that as a to view the fact that that's viewed as a positive outcome to me is a huge mistake because I don't see the people I see who actually live based on those principles is literally the Amish, and you know nobody whose psychology is a product of this system is going to go. Almost nobody's going to go live that way. It's just not going to happen. You know, we're not. People are not, and you know, when we talk about, you know, the Unabomber recently passing, apparently, if that's even a thing, and then, you know, if we talk about, you know, people might romanticize going back and living like Little House on the Prairie, and I understand some people are doing that to some extent, but it's so limited, it might as well not even exist. You know, for effectively, that's not a thing that's going to happen. Uh, People can talk about being off the grid till they're blue in the face. If a person drives their diesel pickup truck to the big box store twice a month and they're on the internet, they're not off the grid as far as I'm concerned. Off the grid, there is no driving the pickup truck to the big box store for supplies twice a month. That's not a thing. And there is no being on the internet. The internet is the grid. So I understand being off the electrical grid, but why don't we say I'm off the electrical grid? Because part of our programming is we've been programmed with these notions of escaping the beast system by being off the grid. Oh, go live on a piece of property and have your own solar power and, you know, have your own well and grow some of your own food. But you still have but they still have a smartphone. They're still on the internet, and they still drive their diesel pickup truck to the big box store twice a month. So is that person really outside the system? No, they're outside the system more than I am, or more than other people. But to be outside the system to a greater or lesser extent is to be in the system. This is still varying degrees of in the system. So surprise, surprise, people whose psychology was formed within the system are still in the system. Until the person completely overcomes that psychology of the system, of course they're of the system to some extent. Of course they are. It's how it works. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. That's me too. I'm also I'm in the system of the system to some extent. My psychology is a product of the system. Period. End of story. Meanwhile, I lived outside of the system to a greater extent for a longer period of time than almost anybody. You know, so what? Yippee skippy yay for Benton. So fucking what? But you know what? At this point, I view it as it's isolation, social isolation. Is it a city person who goes and lives in a city and is isolated, or is it a person who prefers rural country setting to go isolate themselves? What it is it's the opposite of community. It's the opposite of IRL community. It's two different flavors of being isolated. Does the person prefer their isolation? And so I'm more of an urban isolationist. I'm not attracted to rural and country. Now, although I do enjoy those environments at times, I'm more attracted to urbanism and city. That's just as a person, right? That's just how I am as a person. Versus some people have a tendency towards rural and country. But it's still isolation. It's still the same experience. It's still an experience of isolation, you know, regardless. So I just, you know, me personally, I just won't think in those terms anymore of liberal, conservative, Democrat. Now, I will interface with those ideas, but I won't internalize any of those ideas because, you know, you can't have traditional family values and everybody's divorced for the most part. Like, so just that one thing proves that, well, these traditional family values outside of the Amish don't exist. Go to your local church, and almost everybody in there has been married and divorced at least one time. So what are you talking about? Traditional family values. That's a fucking psyop. Blended families is the norm. And I'm not even saying that's wrong or bad. I'm saying what's wrong or bad is to believe that oh, I'm a traditional family values. Okay, but how many times have you been married and divorced? Okay, then you're not traditional family values. Traditional family values is you get married, you stay married. Like the Amish. Now, I'm sure that there's some divorce in the Amish, but you know, what's their divorce rate compared to the rest of the population? You know, are we going to espouse it or are we going to live it? And if a person isn't living it, I don't really give a shit that they espouse it. It's not, to me, it's neither here nor there. Okay, well, it's a person under mind control. They think they believe in traditional family values, except, well, I'm watching their behavior. No, you do not believe in traditional family values. Not you, the listener. Some of you do practice that. right? If I ain't talking to you, I ain't talking to you. But most Americans are not practicing that. So what's the relevance? Who cares? There you go. There you go, Woody. But yeah, certainly, decreasing one's dependence on whatever the beast system, the food supply, the electrical grid. Yeah, of course, that's a great idea. Of course it is. But nobody's going to unplug. Just be like, okay, I'm done with the internet. That's not a thing. And the internet is a grid. It's a computer network. That is a grid. Period. What that is. Can't be off the grid and on the internet. Can't be off the grid and go to the big box store twice a month. Okay, yeah, you're off the grid, but twice a month you're at the super center in the facial recognition, voice recording, the most surveilled, all of that, everything you do and say inside the super center is going straight into the government servers, but you're off the grid. That is the grid. And I don't even think that's bad or wrong. I'm saying, that's a delusion. This is not helpful to live in that delusion. Meanwhile, the system itself promotes these ideas to some extent. These ideas of being off grid, that is promoted by the system to some extent. Yeah. Yeah, everybody's divorced almost. Hell, I've been divorced twice. And I grew up about as conservative. I grew up almost as conservative as one could possibly grow up and not be Amish. I mean, seriously, I fit in with the Pentecostals. That's how they, I was more or less raised. My family wasn't Pentecostals, but some of them were. But you know, but there's, it's just not. Yeah. Anyway, I think I've beaten that horse. Anyway, I guess it's time to sign off, or I'll forget and I'll dox myself. So, thanks for watching. Bye.